Today marks 15 years since the Smoleńsk tragedy. Time passes, but Polish people remember the late president, Professor Lech Kaczyński, First Lady Maria Kaczyńska, and the 94 other victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe. The remembrance appeal was read in front of the presidential palace. Politicians of all sides remember the victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe. In front of the monument to the victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe and Lech Kaczyński, on behalf of the Law and Justice Party, flowers were laid by the late president's brother, Jarosław Kaczyński. Chairman of Republika Tomasz Sakiewicz also laid a wreath. Meanwhile, an ecumenical prayer was held at the Powązki Cemetery, in front of the monument to the victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe. In Kraków, a solemn mass was attended by Polish President Andrzej Duda, who laid a wreath in front of the sarcophagus of Maria and Lech Kaczyński. The memory of those who died at Smoleńsk is important to the head of state.
Chcę podziękować wszystkim, którzy pamiętają i wszystkim tym, którzy dzisiaj.
I want to thank all those who remember and all those who will pay tribute today to those great figures of our political scene, our social life, great Poles, great patriots, who at that time, together with the President of the Republic of Poland, his wife, and President in exile Ryszard Kaczorowski, flew to pay tribute to the Polish officers murdered in Katyń.
Oddać hołd polskim oficerom pomordowanym w Katyniu.
President Andrzej Duda also prayed and laid wreaths at the Powązki Cemetery. In the same, flowers in front of a plaque commemorating late President Lech Kaczyński were laid by the Polish Marshal of the Sejm, Szymon Hołownia. The memory of the victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe was honored with a moment of silence by the Speaker of the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania. Today is a significant day. 15 years ago, our neighbors, the Polish state, and its friends were shaken by a terrible tragedy. In a plane crash, the President of Poland, many parliamentarians, representatives of the military, and most of the Polish political elite were killed. Today is the 15th anniversary of this tragedy. I ask you to observe a minute of silence in memory of all those who died in this disaster. Time heals wounds, but despite the passage of years, it is difficult to fully come to terms with the fact that loved ones are gone irrevocably. It's all the more difficult because some of the victims and their families have clashed with the industry of contempt sustained by politicians affiliated with the civic platform. We have been living these 15 years in a hell of hegemony and slander, accusations, something unimaginable in the civilized world.
Niewyobrażalne w cywilizowanym świecie.
10 kwietnia 2010 roku poseł Jadwiga Wiśniewska była obecna w Smoleńsku, czekając na polską delegację.
Ta delegacja leciała w imieniu polskiego narodu.
This delegation flew on behalf of the Polish nation to this inhumane land, and I, on April 10th, 2010, was waiting in the Katyń forest for the arrival of the delegation headed by the Polish president. And then this terrible news found me there. And I can say that I felt there that the Katyń land is so soaked with Polish blood that it can't get any more so.
Ziemia katyńska jest tak bardzo przysiągnięta polską krwią, że już bardziej nie może.
Another sad reflection comes to mind.
Zginęli w Smoleńsku.
Those who died in Smoleńsk, who flew there, after all, with Poland in mind, our history, our tradition, our common pain. They gave their lives for nothing. They gave their lives not for this kind of Poland, not for a Poland that is divided, that is moving further and further away from any dreams of peace, freedom, democracy. Lech and Maria Kaczyński flew to Smoleńsk to pay tribute to the victims of Katyń, as did the 94 other victims of the Smoleńsk catastrophe. They wanted to honor those who gave their lives for their homeland. It turned out that they shared their fate.
The plan is already outlined. If Rafał Trzaskowski were to win the presidential election in Poland, he would appoint a new National Broadcasting Council, and the latter would withdraw its complaint against yesterday's ruling by the Provincial Administrative Court revoking TV Republica's license. And this would mean making yesterday's decision legally binding. The plan was outlined publicly by Roman Giertych. The question is, what about the independence of the judges? Today, I took a closer look at the situation. The position of the National Broadcasting Council is clear. After this verdict, in this case, the authority in the court's opinion, that is, the chairman of the National Broadcasting Council, violated the rules of administrative procedure to an extent that could affect the outcome of the case. There will be a cassation appeal by the head of the Polish National Broadcasting Council. After the delivery of the reasoned verdict, the National Council will file a cassation appeal against the verdict with the Supreme Administrative Court. Until the legal conclusion of proceedings, the concessions of TV Republika and of Pulse 24 remain in force. This is about to change. In the heads of the civic platform politicians, there is already a plan to revoke the concessions of, among others, TV Republika, a plan to close the system. Today's ruling by the Provincial Administrative Court in Warsaw on the Law and Justice TV station is not final. The National Broadcasting Council is a stakeholder in these proceedings, and it will appeal the verdict to the Supreme Administrative Court. However, nothing prevents the new National Broadcasting Council, which we will certainly elect after the current one is dismissed by the Sejm, the Senate and the President of Poland, from withdrawing the complaint if it finds it unfounded. And then the verdict of the Provincial Administrative Court in Warsaw will immediately become final. Only, what was the actual rationale that pushed Judge Barbara Kołodziejczak-Osepek to formulate such a harsh verdict, meaning the revocation of concessions to two TV stations independent of the authorities? I had the impression, as I listened to the lady judge, that what she was saying had nothing to do with either the law, the documents, or the facts, but very much with the TVN report, which is why so much of it was nonsense. There is a pretext for the assault on democracy and raising a hand against freedom of speech. Yesterday's verdict means much more. It is clear to millions of Poles that the independence of the courts in Poland has basically ceased to exist. If a given decision is within the bounds of discretion, then the court in no way can take into account the fact that the body did not decide as the court would have imagined or as the court wanted it to be. To me, this is a decision that is virtually incomprehensible. I don't fully understand why the court did so. Perhaps it will be able to explain itself in a written statement of reasons. The Administrative Court is de facto a court of law. It examines the legality of a given administrative decision. It doesn't challenge it. Courts cannot assess the validity of administrative bodies' decisions, only their legality. And this is what the Administrative Court did. And secondly, they cannot challenge the discretionary nature of these decisions. And this is exactly what the Administrative Court did. The court questioned the rightness, which it absolutely has no right to do, and evaluated the discretionary nature. The National Council has the right to exercise discretion, while the Regional Administrative Court has no right to question this decision. This is the first time in 30 years that a TV station's license has been revoked by an administrative court. And this means that indeed democracy in Poland is under serious threat. Politicians want to shut down media they do not like. These courts in general, in their current form, should be abolished. There is a need for administrative courts, but to fulfill their role, they should be created from scratch. It is really impossible to defend the thesis that there are any arguments here other than political ones. The plan has been outlined. But how confident is Roman Giertych that it will come together? This is such a show of revealing what the struggle for the rule of law is all about. If one announces one's president and one's council members, the National Broadcasting Council will withdraw the complaint. Attorney Giertych did not have full knowledge here, because the Republika TV is a party to the proceedings and can appeal itself to the Supreme Administrative Court of Poland. And it probably will do so. Silencing free media, including TV Republika, may be one of the most important points in Roman Giertych's plan. In any case, politicians associated with him and Donald Tusk have their own dreams. The idea is that no other media, except those favourable to the government, should exist. This is what these elections are about, so that we are not asked these kinds of questions all the time.
Republika! Republika!
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Germany, no longer ruled by Angela Merkel or her successor Olaf Scholz, seems to be staying the course on an open-doors migration policy. The centralization of the European Union at the expense of national governments and the jeopardization of American involvement in European security. The only thing that's changing is the person in the Chancellor's seat. Friedrich Merz.
Der amerikanischen Regierungen neue Turbulenzen.
The decisions of the new American administration are causing further turbulence. We don't know where this will lead. Therefore, we want to start arranging world affairs under German instructions. In some of his first words after the coalition of the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats was formed, Friedrich Merz attacked Donald Trump, making it clear that the Republican-led American administration is not welcome in Europe. We've already received a couple of such signals. Friedrich Merz, after all, right after the elections, announced that Germany wants to become independent from America and thus wants to create a certain counterweight, which is to be the European Union. The US Army presence, which is a guarantor of security and stability in Europe, particularly Central and Eastern Europe, goes against Berlin's plans for the region. All this comes at a time when a full-scale war is taking place just beyond the EU's borders. Pushing out America would be very dangerous from the point of view of countries like Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, because we are, in a sense, frontline countries. If that were to happen, it would be a great tragedy because America has been stabilizing Europe since the end of World War II, and the fact that American troops have been stationed in Germany for decades is no coincidence. Because, after all, Germany still does not spend even 2% of its GDP on defense. The state their army and security policy are in was laid bare after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when they started supporting Kiev by sending 5,000 helmets. Instead of defense, Berlin spares no expense in bringing in Muslim immigrants, who have turned the lives of many German citizens into a living nightmare.
Migrationswende schon wieder zu den Akten gelegt.
An open migration policy will remain a priority for this government. Merz said otherwise during the campaign, but he is already backtracking on his promises, even though he has not yet become chancellor. Germany has been draining the US economy for years. They export industrial machinery, cars, chemical products and medicines to the United States on preferential terms.
Made in Germany braucht
We want more made in Germany industry. We want the German economy to grow and become more important in Europe, not just in the near term. This is a long-term plan. More German industry, German dominance and German dictates. This is Berlin's proposal, and other EU countries are to comply. The next step may be closer economic cooperation with Europe's most immediate enemy, Russia.
W Niemczech od bardzo dawna słychać głosy.
There have long been voices in Germany, both from political and business communities, calling for a return to close economic relations with Moscow. They are counting on the ceasefire in Ukraine to be accomplished through various actions by the Trump administration, and that they will be able to take advantage of this, first of all by resuming large purchases of energy resources from Russia. Germany changes a helmsman, but does not change course, and continues to lead Europe into increasingly troubled waters.
A sudden twist, frenzy in global stock markets, and the announcement of case-by-case examination. Washington has suspended the implementation of its reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. This applies to all countries except one. China got another increase instead of a suspension. According to analysts, Beijing won't be able to withstand the pressure, but it doesn't seem to be considering capitulation. No one anticipated anything like this. This week will go down in history as a roller coaster for the stock market, from steep declines to an upward rally that, surprisingly, may even exceed the starting positions. All because of another decision by the US president, who, after taking into account requests from countries around the world, decided to suspend the introduction of reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. The markets reacted not just optimistically, but euphorically.
We don't want to hurt countries that don't need to be hurt, and they all want to negotiate. The only problem is, you can only do so many at one time. We want to do it right. We want to get it right. We want to take care of them, but we have to take care of our country.
There is one country, however, that cannot count on tariff relief, at least for now. That country is China, which, reacting aggressively to Trump's announcements, chose, according to Washington, the path of a tariff war rather than an attempt at dialogue. Hence, instead of suspending tariffs on China, Trump increased them to a total of 125%. The Trump administration sees tariffs as a multi-purpose weapon used to improve the competitive environment for U.S. industry, generate significant additional government revenue, but also as a means of exerting pressure to achieve other goals, such as fighting illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Experts in Asian markets have no doubt that, in the long term, China will not be able to cope with these tariffs on goods exported to the United States. Last year, goods exported from China to America were worth approximately $525 billion. American exports to China are worth approximately 5 times less.
For China, that would be a very devastating.
For China, this would be a very disastrous situation in the long run. 6 months or a year off, it would create huge employment problems, and many Chinese companies would close down, resulting in a lot of social unrest. I don't think this situation can continue. Both sides are under a lot of pressure to come together and sit down at the negotiating table. And it seems that China is already slowly moving in that direction. Besides the party's official hardline statements, Beijing is sending signals of willingness to engage in talks. We hope that the United States will cooperate with China based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and mutually beneficial cooperation. We will properly resolve differences through dialogue and mutual consultation. There is also another possible scenario. The growing escalation in the trade war could, according to some analysts, exacerbate tensions between Washington and Beijing, and even lead to open conflict. Above all, this could take place in a situation where China perceives a real threat to its position in the global economy.